Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that inspiring story from Dr. Jamie Schwant. And we're actually going to do something a little bit different for this last segment. And I'm actually going to share with you something that I've learned in a story that I've been through in hopes of helping some of you out there. And I want to tell you about an amazing walk. So to start with, I'm actually just going to get personal and visit with you. I have to tell you about my mom. For some of you, this story might be about your grandma, your grandpa, could be an aunt and uncle, could even be you someday. But this story is about my mom and Alzheimer's disease. Before I dive into the Alzheimer's, I have to start by telling you how amazing my mother was. And of course, every single one of you out there has an amazing mom, and I know you do. But I really think mine was top notch. My mother was a kindergarten teacher for 22 years. She was so good that her principal would beg her all of the time to make videos and to tape her teaching so that other teachers could watch her. And my mom also was really shy, and just the idea just horrified her. And she didn't want anybody to think that she was kind of trying to tell them how to teach, so she never did it. But she was also, of course, an amazing wife. She was my very best friend. We talked every single day. And after I had my son, just the most amazing grandmother you can imagine. So my mom, as every mom is, like I said, was just an amazing person. So when my son was 4 years old, which he's 13 now, we started noticing some things. And you know, as people age, you do start to notice things with your memory. We all joke, oh, I probably have Alzheimer's. And it was kind of the same thing when it started, where little bits of forgetful here and there, and you think, oh, is that normal? Is that not normal? And maybe some of you out there have had that same experience. Well, these are some of the things we started to notice. She started taking a lot of notes about conversations. We would, if I was working late and I'd ask her if she could pick my son up from daycare, you know, she would write it down, and then she would call me and she would confirm what she had written down. Then maybe she would call me again a couple hours later. Okay, Jenny, I just want to make sure. You know, you said 4 o'clock. And so just a lot of extra note keeping that she didn't used to do, and calling to confirm plans, and getting, you know, a little confused sometimes. Another thing that we noticed, that at the time we didn't realize it was a sign, but looking back we realized, started having a lot of difficulty playing games, little card games, board games, the kind of games that we'd play as a family with my 4-year-old son. So as you can imagine, very simple games. She'd draw a card, and each turn took like 60 seconds. And then when she'd go to discard it, she couldn't decide which pile it would go in. And we would kind of laugh and help her. And looking back, we realized that was a sign. Some other things, you know, she had difficulty cooking. Occasionally had problems navigating in haze. They'd only lived here about 5 years at the time, but that was long enough to be pretty familiar. But sometimes she would just get really confused with where things were at. You know, so I was concerned, but it wasn't really until my mom got lost in haze for 2 hours after attending a funeral that we got pretty serious about things, and we started the testing process. The diagnosis came back about 4 months later as early-onset Alzheimer's. My mom was 57. Alzheimer's isn't a disease that just affects the very old. People even in their 30s and 40s can have Alzheimer's disease. As you can see, this is a photo of my mom just a few years after she was diagnosed. And I just want to share with you some of the things we went through, because it is actually amazing. The symptoms are all very similar, and the stages are all very similar among people with Alzheimer's. So very early on, she lost her ability to drive. And as any of you can imagine, when you lose your ability to drive, you lose your freedom. And that's depressing. You know, as young as my mom was, my father still worked, and so she was pretty much housebound. But they lose the ability to dress themselves, need help with dressing. My mother, not all Alzheimer's people lose this, but she lost the ability to read and to write. She couldn't, as it progressed, she could not bathe herself. She later lost the ability to fully communicate. It was difficult for her to communicate. Eventually she forgot who she was, to the point where she thought she was a child, and then forgot who I was. And with Alzheimer's, you eventually forget how to live. So Alzheimer's is actually fatal, and my mom died at the age of 62 from Alzheimer's disease. So we all hear about Alzheimer's, and I want to tell you, why is it so hard? The thing with Alzheimer's that is so difficult is you lose somebody over and over again. You mourn them when you get the diagnosis. You mourn as you go through the 7 stages. Each time something new starts and you lose an ability or something is taken from them, it's a mourning process for the loved ones, for that person, the caretakers. So it is just a lengthy, painful mourning process. There's a saying that says you can miss someone who died, you can miss someone who moved away, but the worst is when you miss someone you see every day, and that's what Alzheimer's is. You can sit right next to the person that you love and you miss them because they're not that person anymore. You still love them, but you miss them. So I learned a lot through my journey, and there's 3 things that I want to share with you from that. And the first one is educate yourself. It's easier sometimes, and I did this at first too, to kind of stick your head in a hole and say, I don't want to know what's going to happen next, because it's not going to be good. It's kind of like watching the movie Titanic, right? I mean, how it's going to end, and that's the same with Alzheimer's. But by educating yourself, you actually can know what's coming up in the next stages, and that helps you prepare. Live in their world. You're never going to pull them back into yours. So when they tell you for the 50th time about a story, every single time, you pretend like it's the first time you ever heard it, because guess what? To them, it is the first time they ever told you. And then seek resources, get help. There's area agencies on aging, Alzheimer's Association, care facilities, and for those of you that know somebody that is caring for somebody with Alzheimer's, it is incredibly difficult. So please support that person. So, kind of going through all this, I want to finish with a few facts, but I want to tell you that there is some positive that we'll try to do with all of this. But the final facts are, anyone with a brain is at risk for Alzheimer's. That means every single one of you watching and your loved ones. 1 in 6 people will get Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's is 100% fatal. There's no way to prevent it, to slow it down, or to even cure it. So here's the thing. I want us to work together to help find a cure. It's sad, depressing. Alzheimer's, it stinks, let's face it. But there are things we can do to find a cure so you don't get it, so your children don't get it, so maybe even if we find it in time, your parents won't. I am the co-chair of the Hayes Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is the largest fundraising event for Alzheimer's research in the nation. In Kansas, there are 14 different walks that happen each year to raise money. So if you don't live by Hayes, that's okay. There's probably a walk near you. The Alzheimer's Association is an amazing charity. I encourage you to research it. But they use 80% of their funds to go to research supporting people with Alzheimer's and education. The Hayes Walk is October 10th, 2015 at the Fort Hayes Robbins Center. Registration's at 10:30 a.m. and the walk is 11, and all of the proceeds benefit the Alzheimer's Association. So I encourage you, how you can help, I want you to form a team and come out and walk with us, join a team, donate, or sponsor as a business. If you want to learn more about the event, you can go to alz.org and you can find out about all the different walks in our area. You can also like our Facebook page for the Hayes one. It's just Hayes Walk to End Alzheimer's. Come out, like our Facebook page. But I just want you all to help me find a cure for this disease so that we don't have to see it in future generations. We'll be right back.